Thank you for the opportunity. I was thanking for the opportunity to give this presentation about FET. So how the EU 13 countries might be incorporated in a in a better scale, in a higher number in FET projects. And as I told you, I'm a researcher from Hungary, a physicist, and I would like to talk about, from the viewpoint of the so-called Hungarian researcher, how we can see this, how we might be able to improve the situation. So for that, possibly it's important to introduce myself in order to see what is my viewpoint. I'm coming from, as you said, a Vienna Research Center for Physics, which is, and also I have worked a lot in the technology, so in the Budapest University of Technology and Economics. That is for the second, this is working. So here, but now my main position is here, which has a relatively large institute with a total staff of more than 300 people, with in Hungarian scale with a good income altogether. So, but also I have some view from this university point of view, because you will see that at the moment the possibilities are in Hungary, particularly for the universities and these research institutes, are not the same within the country. And also what experience I have in the EU FET projects, I think it's also important to list, because it also shows my personal, how to say, development in this learning phase maybe was also useful. Because it started with a so-called project called Diamond, which is not important in this case, but was important here when I want to emphasize that first this project was approved, and then there was a call called Enlarge EU, which was for this, particularly for EU 13 countries, in order to join to already approved research consortium, where maybe complementary, studies or complementary skills can be used in order to enlarge the already approved EU consortium. And this was the first time how you could join, because they called me, they invited me from this research consortium to be involved. And then in this process, everybody had to write, myself had to write a kind of self-contained proposal that was evaluated, so from these EU member countries, and that was for those who were approved could join to this. And that was the first case. In the second case, in another project, in this case I was became a kind of an ordinary so-called PI in this particular research consortium already. So that means that we already knew each other, and we get together, and they invited me to use my skills, to use my expertise in this project. And now, I'm now in the proposal phase. Now I'm a consortium leader in the proposal phase. It's not already approved. Horizon 2020 FET project, where we had an idea what should be the target. And because I knew these people, I called them, and they agreed that there should be the consortium leader of this particular proposal. So you could see that if you get some acknowledgement and you are as an expert, as a researcher, you are known from other researchers from other countries within you, you might be able even to lead a consortium, not just participate. So that's why I thought that it's important to see how it happened with me, this kind of evaluation. So in order to address the question to the future, how to be incorporated in this in the future FET studies. So FET means future and emerging technology, right? So the technology is the keyword maybe here. So in order to know why we need this conference at all, so why it seems that EU has a problem in incorporating this EU 13, I think the first issue is to identify the problems, right? So we have to deeply identify the problems in order to see what it can do. And unfortunately, and this list maybe is particularly true for Hungary, but I believe it might be generalized for EU 13 countries sharing a very similar, history and background, and the deficit, let's say. And so these are the weak points of Hungary and possibly another countries here around, or not maybe not all of them. I'm talking about the 13 countries. So basically, the first point is that the industrial sector is relatively weak and not innovative. So in Hungary now, the industrial sector in numbers are not so bad in the sense that, let's say, in the GDP, I mean, the industrial sector is relatively at a high fraction, but most of these companies are coming from, from EU or even US countries and other countries where they have their own global research centers. And these are not located in Hungary. And mostly, if they would like to be involved in any FET or other EU projects, they are using their base research center, and most of them anyway do not have any research center here. So this is the first problem, and that's not innovative. That doesn't mean the company not innovating in Hungary at least. And the industry sector that is based on where the base is indeed in Hungary. There are only a few exceptions that might be competitive, like in the pharmacy industry in Hungary. There are some in the pharmacy industry. So in biotechnology we do have a chance, and also some companies with ICT. So like info communication and communication, there are some companies, small medium-sized companies that could be competitive, but there are rather few exceptions. And not a kind of rule. So that is the first problem. The second problem is that the research infrastructure is, quite amortized. So that means, and also with a few exceptions we have, particularly in Hungary, what I do know is that possibly it's already acknowledged within Europe that in Hungary the neuroscience traditionally is very good. And they could basically involve money even from Europe already from the 90s. So there, the research infrastructure is in a better shape, but in most of the cases, and also a few exceptions in physics, some parts of physics, the research infrastructure in general is much in a weaker stand. And this is very problematic. And that it has some consequences, I tell you. And the other thing is that also the salaries are extremely low, particularly in Hungary. I don't know the situation in all of these other countries, but I do know that in Hungary it is about a quarter. So I'm not talking about few percentage. It's about a quarter or less than the average salaries in Germany, for instance. I'm not talking about the highest salaries, the standard salaries. So it's extremely low. And it means that many people are could leave before simply the academia area. I'm talking about research and not about, I'm a researcher side, not from the entertainment side. So but I'm talking about now research, particularly from research point of view, or maybe just left. Went to other countries to continue the work. And also here I have to mention that the budget, of national funds, resources, sometimes usually insufficient. It was quite insufficient. Also, that means that it was even not enough to give enough resource to be participating in an EU call, because you needed to have your own kind of resource in order to be involved in the FET projects. And the last point, the existing research potential that still exists here. I'm not saying this. That the situation is catastrophic, and I'm saying at all. I'm saying there is still a few potential that we recognized here when I was here in this particular room. There's still, existing potential, but maybe it's not enough, not very visible. For instance, I told you the neuroscience is is kind of famous, but you might say, is it known in Europe, across Europe? When Professor Ashton was here, at the Barroso, who was the Barroso's, Barroso's office. She was the, I would say, what you call it, representative of science, or in his office. She even didn't know so much about it when she visited us, and she could see all these results. And we have ERC advanced brands. In 1 year, 2 of them went to the same institute, etc. She recognized that, but it was not so. She was not aware of these results. So maybe, as you said, the PR must be better even for those few exceptional, areas or fields where the countries are quite strong in research or in other fields. And now I would say that there's also a big problem, but it's no, I mean, it's not for EU13. Maybe it's also mentioned here that maybe you know who are living, for a longer time in EU knows better the language of EU. So the problem is the following. So I draw this scheme, and maybe you don't follow this, or maybe you don't I would say you don't agree. But basically, I think that is how it happens. So somehow from the industry in EU, or some researchers have an idea, especially an idea of what should be in the calls, right? But then in EU, it's very important to make it understand how the people, the society understands why, because we put taxes and money from the people to make it understand why we spend money on research and FET. So you translate it, the ideas from research, the original ideas research and industry, to the, I call it EU Commission language. And these are the calls, the text, what we can read, the potential candidates who are learning for this. And we have to translate from this language to ours to understand what they really want. So even this Horizon 2020 calls, I have to say, it's not easy for us to understand what they really want exactly. I mean, really. So that what we are doing is that, I think the problem is that there is a translation here, there is another translation here, and maybe these two translations are not the same. So maybe we don't identify exactly what they really want. So what we learned already, that we need direct information from Brussels. So we need to go there and ask them what they thought, or what they are thinking of this, or what they thought of this call and things like that. And so that because we have these difficulties, now we can identify also that what is the consequences of these difficulties I listed over there. So, for instance, the participation of Hungarian companies is atypical. There was a very good counterexample on the previous day. FET2020 Ltd, who developed this, also is very close to the development for neuroscience. So they made this a new type of device. They call it the 3x3D device for bioimaging of the neuroscience. So but it's very atypical that a Hungarian company could win an FET call. And the reason for that I already told you. So and then it's very important, it's also appeared here, for the reason that we have a problem with the amortization of amortized infrastructure. Mostly the simulation and theoretician groups are simply more stronger in these countries, for the reason that for doing experimental research, which is much closer to technology, right? You need good infrastructure. So that's why these kind of experimental groups were withering, in the sense that because if you don't have a good device or good equipment, which might cost 1 or 2 million euro, just a single device or a single equipment, so even if you're an expert on this, you might be able to achieve good results, or you have a good ideas what to do with it, but simply you could not access it or you cannot buy it, then you are out of the competition. And that's the reason why usually we are stronger here, because if you need only your brain, maybe let's say this is not so device specific, or you might achieve some infrastructure in EU like high PC, so high performance computing. You are able to to write a proposal and access those computers, and you can run your simulation over there, and you don't have to have your own computers in your lab. That's possible, and you can do it remotely. And that's why I think this is the reason why we have this. But I don't think it's a good thing, so we have to change it. And also, as I told you, that because of the low limit, the relatively low level of these national income or national budget, so sometimes it was really a big problem, even when we think of winning any kind of application, just to pay the depreciation and VAT in the FP7. And particularly in Hungary, you might know that at the moment, this is the highest the VAT value is the highest in Europe anyway now. It's over 27%. So it is not like 7% like in Switzerland. So it's really a big amount of money if you buy any equipment at least in our level. And the other thing is that there was, because the traveling was not so, the character of science has changed, I have to admit. So before, it was like a small manufacturer, some small skills, and separately, and you talk to each other, and we would call societies, so small societies. Now, the character of the science totally changed. So it became like a big industry, and when you have to meet a lot, you have to exchange the ideas a lot, and you have to advertise. So that's why these Nature papers went up, because you have to advertise, you have to show that you are very good. It's like advertisements, for entertainments. So we have to learn this, that the character is also changed. So you can imagine that we started when the society was starting to be open after the 1990s. Also, there was a big revolution in science itself. It's very, very difficult for us to somehow to follow this, because of the deficit also coming from maybe from history, and also the background, the cultural background we have. We have to change a lot, and we have to fit to this new, to these new challenges. It's very, very difficult. And of course, we have to change this. And also, there was little direct information about the calls. I told you it's important to have direct information. Now, I think there are some new things in this Horizon 2020 call with respect to the FP7 rules and calls that's beginning to be a little bit better for us, particularly for the FET open call. I'm talking about FET open calls particularly. So I could see that now in this FET open calls, the discovery science is more represented. Now you don't want always to say that I would like to have a prototype device and etc. Now the discovery science is more represented, which I told you it fits better to this EU13 land. And I think it is not just because good for our EU13 countries, but I believe it is also very good for the entire EU, because I believe every kind of science and technologies rest on the discovery science, and the discovery science is a new thing that can really revolutionize the technology itself. And as somebody just told in the morning, the gap, sometimes, particularly when the material science, the discovery science finds something, maybe the time needed to reach the technology, that time frame just shrink a lot. So I think it's a good idea from EU, also just for itself for the goodness to really try to push a little bit toward the discovery science, and I think it's have a better chance for these countries also to be involved in those research consortium. And now the VAT is fully covered, which is, I believe, as I told you, for us, for these countries that have a problem with this national budget for covering the science, it's an important issue, I have to say. But I realized that maybe not true, but the maximal annum, so the per year 800 salary for adjustment is, I think it was a kind of rule, a new rule in Horizon 2020, which I believe it might be not a good idea, because, as I told you, we are talking about 3-4 times, differences in the salaries. So basically, this 8,000 euro per year basically does not help, but rather conserves the big gap. So it is, I would say, is not very encouraging when a professor with as a PI would like to go for and participate. It might be used, the EU might be used also to somehow to try to also to let's say, to close this gap and not open, not try to conserve this big gap, what's there. So I don't believe that was a good move from the EU with respect to the FP7, although I understand why you're doing this, but you have to really know the actual situation, what is the very, very big difference between the average level and for a researcher here, I mean, the income in EU 13 countries and the rest. So basically, I'm not saying that the FET calls should be used to stop a brain drain or to try to reverse it, but at least it might be still used at least to conserve, to try to let's say to discourage this kind of movement, because I think the full Europe can be better when these countries, the EU 13 countries, are in better shape. But then what we can do, and at least what I can talk, I mean, because I know only the Hungarian situation, so what we can do, what Hungary did in order, because not just myself, but others recognize this situation. So what are the recent moves in Hungary in order to be able to be incorporated better, to be able to participate in these FET calls and other EU calls? So particularly in the recent past, I mean, the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, even in the crisis time, could have a larger budget and started to new programs in order to do something. So for instance, they started the so-called, we call it in Hungarian language, Lendület program. This means momentum, Lendület momentum program in Hungarian sciences, in order to attract scientists, particularly younger scientists, with enhanced budget, at national level, with promising research programs, in order to attract people with such research fields that are very promising. And I think it was a very, very nice idea. Frankly, I'm also participated in this program right away, which helped us to also have new research fields which is attractive across Europe. And also now recently they started the visiting scientists program. So as I told you, particularly in astrophysics or in neuroscience, we have good institutes, good researchers, and even so-called foreign researchers or researchers from EU or even US can visit us because they think that the research level is so high that they are interested to come here and participate. And it's still in Hungary, it's not usual, unfortunately, like in European countries. You go to a German research center, the nationality is not important anymore. It can come in every part of the world. And they are trying to try, when they have a high level of research, to involve more and more professors from EU or abroad in order to affiliate it with our institutes, in order to help also to have a better understanding of EU and a better understanding the culture and the background of the original western part of the EU and to fit to the new requirements. And now also the Hungarian Academy of Sciences have some money in order to improve the infrastructure. So that was an infrastructure program, but unfortunately this infrastructure, that means that you could buy new devices, new equipment that were quite expensive, but unfortunately the universities in this particular program were not involved. So the Hungarian Academy of Sciences is not just a body for researchers, but also they are responsible for running institutes, similar to Max Planck institutes in Germany, let's say. In a way, the missions of those institutes usually fits to that Max Planck institutes. And now this is run by the Academy of Sciences. And so they started to do this, but still the level is not sufficient, not enough sufficient still. And the universities still have a problem in order to get to obtain or to have this. And the Hungarian Academy of Sciences also tried to have an extra support, an extra, effort to have a better national contact point in Brussels. And then in order to get direct information from Brussels. So we could really see this is very important, and I can see that now the Hungarian Academy of Science is trying to do something. So they're trying to make this office stronger, and also they are giving money to the institutes in order to promote, in order to support the travels to Brussels and get direct information from them, in order to understand the FET programs and to be involved. And the government, what they did is they are trying to involve more students in technology sector. So it means that they are opening more the opportunities at the Technology University of Budapest. And we have also a national flagship program for neuroscience. So also the government realized that we have a good tradition, a very good results in this. So we have also a national flagship program, very similar to the EU flagship program of brain sciences, and basically the same institute is involved in both. And now, and also we have in physics, as a niche fields of physics, we have also good researchers, just as in graphene. Now one group could join to the graphene flagship from Hungary, from the flagship researchers. And also now the Hungarian Academy of Sciences try to reorganize these institutes in order to be more profitable or more efficient. And in this frame of this, the government is supported to build a completely brand new, not just building, but full infrastructure of chemistry, particularly chemistry laboratories. So the material science, which is closer to the FET, now we have a kind of big amount of money went there. So they really try to improve the situation. That's what we can do at national level. But maybe, and I can tell that what a researcher can do at personal level, and I have on just 2 slides more. So what a researcher can do, first of all, from a research point of view, first of all, he has to work, or she has to work, well, carry out excellent research. That's the most important thing. So to be really an expert on his field, on her or his field, and working hard, and this is the first, the base of everything. The second is that when they have or she have, where she or he has good results, it's very important to go workshops, conferences, and give seminars, and identify those people that might be interested in his or her work. So it's important. So not just to wait for anybody to be recognized, but trying to identify the leading scientists in the world or in the EU, and try to go there and give seminar, etc. And then, because what my experience is that the personal contacts are very important. So in practice, so we want to be incorporated in FET call, how you are able to do this. It's very rare that it happens like through email exchange and etc. You have to build a connection, you have to have a kind of personal contact, and because it's much more efficient. And also the personality is sometimes important. So let's say it's not just FET projects, it's also about people. So people together, working together, and also personalities might be important. So not just your expertise, and for that you need personal contacts. So it's very, very important. So that's what on an individual level, what a researcher can do. Of course, it also depends on the budget, the national budget. So how many travels you are allowed to do or you can do. But at least within Europe, I don't think it's so big problem anymore. It is when you have, this non-expensive flights, etc. So I think it's even doable at the present level of the budget, of the national budget. And okay, I have some ideas that what EU Commission might do or might think about that, how we can strengthen these EU third region to be incorporated in these FET or other programs. So, as you identified, it would be very, very important to somehow to to strengthen the experimental groups. And I told you that the big problem is that most of the cases, so in general, the research infrastructure is not in a good shape in these countries. And I know that there are other EU funds that are particularly devoted to improve this situation, to improve the infrastructure. But this generally goes, I mean, the government, usually in these countries, I guess, are more interested to first to recover other infrastructure, like in traffic, where you could have a direct, let's say, influence on the trade and economy. And possibly this is not in priority. You can, and I could understand, you might say that you could understand that there are other priorities. Maybe first to recover those infrastructure or build those infrastructures that are really needed directly in the industry or for the traffic or for the trade. And I believe it might be possible, or you might think that if there would be special EU calls that are particularly devoted only for research infrastructure. I'm not talking about building, rather on equipments and devices. So building only in the sense when it's needed in order to host any equipment or device. So it will be very useful. Whether or not it should be in a part of the joint lab with any other EU countries or directly also without joint lab, it's another question. But I believe that would be very important. Okay, maybe it's not for this, how to say, if you start this, we still have a chance that in the last period of these next 7 years, you could see an influence, that you could see an increase, you would see an increase of the participation of these EU countries if you start this program in time. And I learned also that was this enlarged EU call. I think it was quite good, quite a good idea. So it might be possible that if you see that the participation of these EU countries, the EU 13 countries, is too low for some reason, you might think that you try to somehow balance a little bit with this enlarged EU call, but you might have already, I mean, the EU officers have an experience, or EU committee has an experience already in FE7, so that this already approved research consortia or the leaders of that would really try to find some groups in this region, research groups that can join with good skills. Of course, the excellence is the first, and then you can correct this, this part, you can correct this thing later on as a post action, let's say. And I think you might also think about it that you might promote such research consortia that involve EU 13 groups, particularly when the consortium leader is from EU 13, so to encourage this. So of course the first thing is the excellence or the skill, because it should not go for the expense of the of the FET, which is for excellence and trying to make this. But let's imagine that you have two groups, one from outside from the EU region, EU 13 region, the other one is from research with the same, more or less the same skills. Then if you promote, I mean, if it's a good point, an extra point for the full research consortium, if you choose then from the EU 13 countries, that might be good. I don't know if it's against the discrimination, it's a kind of discrimination, how you say, but I would say it's an extra plus point, so it would be a kind of, yeah, it was the last chance. So it would be only, how to say, also a kind of strategy in order to involve these EU 13 groups better or more. And my last point is that you might imagine that, as I told you, that now the traveling is not a big problem, and still in some some countries in this EU 13 region still could have a problem, even at national level to travel enough. And then in the proposal phase, so when you are writing a proposal, in the proposal phase, there could be such a call where you are trying to support these travels between declared partners. So declaration means in the proposal phase that, for instance, a group from the EU, from the non-EU 13 groups, the consortium leader declares that she or he would like to incorporate any research group from that particular research group from the EU 13 group, and then we can apply together for traveling money in order to realize the writing of the proposal and the research plan for FET, and then apply together. So you might, I'm not saying that is the highest, should have the highest priority, but for some countries within the EU certain region, it will definitely help the situation. And thank you for your patience and attention.